Ready on?
Yes.
All right. All right, are we ready? Good evening, everyone. The time is 7 p.m. We will call this meeting to order. Ruth, if you will, take roll, please.
Michael Lloyd,
Here.
John Vita. Here. Martin O'Toole.
Here.
Cindy Matija. Here. Lindsay Summer.
Here.
Okay, first order of business this evening is to approve the meeting minutes from our September 21st meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review? Any questions, comments, or edits? Okay, in that case, I will make a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
Michael Lloyd,
Yes.
John Vita.
Yes.
Martin O'Toole.
Yes.
Cindy Matija.
Yes.
Lindsay Summer.
Yes.
All right, we have one case on the agenda this evening, BZA case 22-08, in which the applicant for the property located at 576 Industrial Parkway is seeking both an area variance and a use variance. Now, before we start this, I'm going to ask that the applicant and all those in attendance this evening, anyone who intends to comment, that you be sworn in. Bridie, would you?
Sure. If anyone intends to speak, if you could raise your right hand. Probably. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay, I want to first say that the applicant, you've been made aware that you are also to appear before the planning commission for a conditional use permit to operate a restaurant in a B1 I1 district. Do you understand that even if you do receive a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals, that this variance will be conditioned upon approval from the planning commission?
Yes.
And that no work, construction, operation could begin until you receive that planning commission approval. All right. So, Mr. Davies, you are, this is the applicant. Would you mind starting by explaining to the board the details of this project, why you need the area and use variance?
Sure. Thank you all for being here. My name is Justin Davies. I'm with Anthony Kasevich and Associates, architect from Cleveland, here on behalf of Dwayne and Rachel Sherry. We're the owners of Flying Guys Barbecue. And the project entails the space of 576 Industrial Parkway in a large commercial building with two other tenants. And they would like to house their commercial kitchen in the tenant space. There's some additional offices as well. They'll have some prep area and food storage as well, cold storage and dry storage. And it's for their business, Flying Guys Barbecue, which is really primarily a catering business. So the majority of the business is done offsite for private events and pop-up shops and Sunday markets and things of that nature. So as their business has grown over the years, they've really tended to move towards a lot more of the catering, which has been the primary source of their business income. So in order to accommodate the cooking of their barbecue, we are proposing an accessory building on the outside, which will house the two smokers, which are really integral to their business. And in doing so, the intent is to provide some coverage from the elements while they're cooking outside, provide a safe distance from the existing building because it is a wood burning smokers. And also, provide some protection. It's a partially open structure, so it'll be enclosed on 3 sides to provide some extra protection from the general public and really kind of enclose those smokers for safety reasons. And the accessory structure would also have an overhang to store their wood, which is fuel for smokers. And in addition to that, they currently own a non-mobile food truck. And the intent for the food truck is they would like to have the food truck on the property to use for takeout. It's essentially a takeout window for the barbecue on specific times. And the intent is to do it, during the week from 4 to 8, and then on Saturdays, essentially for the whole day from 11 to 8 o'clock. And this is really primarily just for use for takeout. So, there's currently no plans to have any seating on the property to really have people, staying and eating food there. It would really be for takeout purposes only. And I think that is essentially just it.
That's like made to order, like
Yeah,
you show up, you order, it's no call ahead ordering, it's just.
There probably will be an online ordering aspect since the industry is moving, trending towards that being the preferred way to order.
so it's one of the variances we're seeking is the use of a food truck, although it's, based on the intent of the zoning code, we feel it's a non-mobile food truck. It's essentially, you can compare it to putting a tent in the yard and, having that as kind of a takeout. So it's really not intended for, infringing on any of the intent of the zoning restrictions based on the food truck.
I'm sure there's plenty of questions from the board. I think maybe we start with the first variance, which would be the area variance, and then we can move to the use variance. If everyone's okay with that. So the details of the area variance is that you're seeking a side yard setback distance will be 12 feet 4 inches, and the zoning requirement is 30 feet. So the you're requesting a variance of 17 feet and 6 inches from the rear, or from the.
So I think it's actually flipped. So it'll be, the proposed setback is 17.8. So
There's a conflict.
is there a conflict?
Well, the drawing and the applicant's submission says 17.4 setback, so a variance of 12.8. The way I read the inspector's report, flipped the numbers, and that appears to be carried over in the agenda.
Yes.
So what is the actual setback?
The request,
Apologize.
you're,
The required setback from the side yard is 30 feet, and we're proposing to be 17.8 away from the property line. So we're asking for a 12-foot for variance. Okay. To the setback. And that was really, the intent was, there's actually space kind of closer to the building that we could actually push it closer. But we really wanted to maintain, there was some information in the zoning ordinances that aren't specific to smokers per se, right? But, enclosed chimneys and things of that nature was a 15-foot distance from the existing. So we tried to stay within that distance for, safety purposes based on the intent we felt that's stated. Having said that, we've kept the entire smokers 15 feet away, although the firebox for the smokers is on one side of the smoker. So we could keep the fireboxes 15 feet away with, a larger part of the smokers within that 15 feet, but we decided to take the safe route and try to, maintain that full 15-foot distance.
So I have a couple questions, and then I'll open it up to the rest of the board. So based on this plan here, where the accessory structure is placed, where it's on the other side of the walkway, between the walkway and the side of the property line, correct? Is that where it is intended to be placed?
Yes.
Okay, so when I looked at that, when I drove by and looked at it, there's a bunch of trees in that area, right? So
Correct.
those will be removed, and that
Yeah.
there is a smoker trailer that's on site right now, right? Is that, what would be underneath that structure?
Correct.
That and another
Okay.
smoker as well.
Okay.
So you are gonna remove the trees, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I think at least two of the trees on the property would need to be removed. There is a a buffer of trees between the adjacent property there that would remain. So we would try to keep as much of it as possible. But obviously, someone needs to be removed to accommodate the construction.
Okay, open this up to the board to any questions?
I have a question. So how are people going to get back into there if you're walking? I mean, basically, there's a sidewalk in the front, so you're not going into the side yard. Are you putting a sidewalk in there? What are you planning on doing for people to walk back to get your truck, to get your product?
Actually, so you see the parking lot is basically the existing signage right there. And the food truck is literally bumped right up against the parking lot. So there's actually no need for them to walk anywhere near the building.
So you are putting it right on the parking
Yeah.
lot? Okay.
So those parking spots remain?
Yep.
They're Okay. So that food truck is essentially on the grass area that's existing. Okay.
Well, just since we're on the topic, sorry to interrupt, because the drawing says grass area. So is grass area gonna be paved area? Because it looked like pavement when I was there.
I have some pictures of, Cheryl.
There is in front of the 4 parking spaces, there's a small sidewalk strip. I think probably about 3 feet.
Yeah, I got it.
I have some pictures of them as well. But the majority of the front, where the food truck is in the grass area there.
Okay, I've got a better vision of the drawing now. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Yep. Because the upper right corner of the drawing is the fence that has a gate.
Correct. So going on,
All right, and so the paved area is that where all the detail is, just off of where it says property owner to the left of that. Correct. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you for the clarification.
How much smoke does a smoker count?
Good question.
I would say because it's outdoors, the smoke, I mean, it functions just like a chimney, where it goes straight up and it practically dissipates. So, it's like the structure is there for safety reasons, but it'll have like vents at the top so that the smoke does funnel out, so it's not just hanging out in that structure. And then, it's kind of like, I guess a small, really small bonfire, I guess, because, bonfire has probably 10 to 15 logs. We put 1 log in the smoker every 2 hours. If that kind of gives you an idea of the amount of smoke that comes out of it.
You're doing it wrong if there's a lot of smoke billowing out. It might be while you're feeding it, but the idea is you almost don't even want to see the smoke, or else that's too much. So it's maintaining the fire.
Got it. Are there generally safety concerns with these buildings setting on fire?
No, because it's literally a firebox, like an enclosed metal box. And again, it's one log every 2 hours. And then as soon as we put the log in, we close the door, so there's no fire like actually coming out.
And the intent is, the accessory structure will be fully non-combustible material.
Does smoke that comes from a smoker damage trees or buildings nearby?
No, like we've been in our current space for about, exactly 5 years. And we have like a brick wall right next to us, and you can't even tell that a smoker is next to it.
I asked Ruth to bring up an elevation view of the structure for the smoker. So the chimney is on the smoker. It's not actually gonna go up through what I presume is a roof.
Right.
Okay. So actually, the height of the chimney of the smoker will be less than that brick masonry
It'll probably be above the masonry, but
below the roof.
however many feet is deemed safe below the roof.
Yeah, but in some design standards, it's an 8-foot minimum. It's best for creating a close smoker. With 6-foot wall and the opening around the perimeter, intended to obviously dissipate and build up.
The question is, who's gonna be feeding it? I mean, you're gonna have it going all night long, obviously, it sounds like, so is there gonna be somebody on the property?
At all times.
At all times,
Mhm.
okay.
And then we also have temperature gauges in the smoker when it's in operation. So that way, if it gets above a certain temperature, then it's just like, okay, let me go check this out, see what's going on. But that, knock on wood, hasn't happened since we started the business.
So currently, where you're located, you're not 15 feet away from the building.
No, actually, I'm not.
So just to understand the request for this variance, my understanding initially was that the request for the variance was to try and look at the other zoning regulations that we had and try and be cognizant of those. Do you need this variance to function, or are you trying to be as helpful as possible in looking at the other zoning regulations?
We're trying to be as responsible as possible. And I think in an ideal situation, if I can speak for Dwayne, they prefer to have it closer to the building, just so they have, in inclement weather, they have quicker and easier access into the commercial kitchen space without, precipitation on the food essentially.
Okay, so if this variance was denied, you would feel comfortable putting this closer to the building and would still be able to build the structure and your business would still be able to function?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have one primary question and a couple secondary. Could I do please? Ruth, could you please pull up the GPS, the satellite image? And drag it down so we can see the property to the north of it. There we go, where the property to the north. If we look at the adjacent property to the north, is there anybody there who would be impacted or take exception to this in any way, the adjacent property?
It's just by which direction
Yeah,
north.
which is
North is straight up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, you're saying.
Are you asking us or the other board members? I apologize.
Well, if okay, I meant to ask you all, is there anybody in an adjacent property who could be impacted by this? And when I drove back there and I saw it, felt kind of like very muddy and semi-cemented and semi-not. And I couldn't really like tell where the property lines were just by, it wasn't obvious to me, right? And so even when I look at this, and I look at, okay, when this property stops, there's another property that begins. And I was just asking, is there the other property that begins, is there any use or person or interest over there that can be compromised by what we're talking about?
I guess it depends on your definition of use or compromise, because again, we grown our business 5 years in Vernon in a tinier space than what we have here. Like our closest neighbor is literally across like a 10-foot alleyway. And we've not impacted any of their business at all. We have a building literally right next to us, like adjacent property right next to us. We haven't impacted their business at all. We have tenants who live upstairs of us and to the left of us. We haven't impacted their way of life at all. You know, smoke has been an issue for them.
Okay, so may I just go on that, so, and I'm way good with that, I'm just asking just to ask. And so then is there anybody at all conceptually in the environment community around us that has a problem with you doing this?
Not that we're aware of, we only talk to our immediate neighbors, meaning Living Lean is on one end, and there's like an ortho sport type place where we meet one-on-one, they're super excited, they're all very excited for us to be there, so we have asked them. And then the industrial parkway north of that is like a little garden. And we did talk with the person who was tending the garden.
That was my question.
Yeah, he was, Mark, our landlord, has talked to him and he's completely fine with it. Beyond, above, north of that, KDI is there. I'm not sure, I think it's like a shirt manufacturing place or here well in that space, but there's so much distance.
Okay.
I would be surprised, especially with food businesses kind of sandwiching that with like Hunyans and Pony Boys and.
I got it, so there's nobody
Not
taking a
that
position
we're.
against this, there's nobody, okay.
No.
So the final question I had on my other place was, we go back to the image of the smoke shack or the smoke house, I've seen it in a couple ways. Just to be sure, you're not intending any commercial signage on it, are you?
No.
Okay, all right, that's it.
All right, just need to take a look. All the adjoining properties were notified by this email. Just I'll let you know.
Okay, thanks.
And nobody responded?
Unless somebody here from the audience, no.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, did that include the church? Because that's the playground back there and everything else, that would be my biggest concern, would be people going around, maybe said they're not staying there to eat, but that would be a concern for me.
Yes, the church is in St. Joan of Arc.
Yes.
We're definitely notified because they're within 250 feet of the property, though they are not in the village. They're still notified.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's a valid point, is that is the most southwestern parcel within the village. And so immediately to the south and to the west are outside of South Russell. Essentially to the west outside of Geauga County.
Right. But they were all notified.
I was just curious with children on campus there.
Yeah, I have been looking to see, because we have 3 kids of our own, and there's a playground. Like, you see that black box right there, kind of up in the corner, that's a playground. And then there's the diamond for the, it's a
Baseball,
baseball,
softball,
softball field, but it's,
Yeah, they play soccer back there.
do they? Okay,
Yeah, they have.
I've been
all
just
this
kind of keeping my eye out, and I haven't seen much movement, just to kind of gauge what happens back there.
Your Saturdays are probably busy because of the CYO activity and things like that. That's why I was just kind of curious. If since you're doing it from 4 to 8, chances are you won't have a lot of activity unless it's practice back there with adults.
Any other questions from the board?
Thank you.
The letter from Pascovich and Associates, September 23rd, 2022, that we were provided states, provide a safe distance from the existing structure. I just want to clarify that to date, safe distance has been defined as 15 feet.
Based on the ordinances of South Russell, that's the closest definition. And it was a bit of an interpretation on my part, because obviously there's no specific ordinances based on smokers or barbecues. So as stated previously, I think ideally we would like it closer and feel that it wouldn't have an impact, but we didn't want to infringe on another ordinance by, proposing it closer to the building at that point, so.
Thank you. And again, sorry, if you bring up the drawing that showed the east elevation. My question while she's doing that is, it shows the wood stack. Yeah, that lower right hand corner of the image. Is there a possibility what possibility is there to relocate that item, the wood
Change the
stack,
orientation.
and be able to move that wall further from the property line, and therefore there would be a small variance? Similar to the questions that,
I think we would certainly be open to that. I think that, the aspect of the wood storage being on that end of the structure, it just helps accommodate for wood delivery closer to the drive. So that was the design intent.
I'm not trying to finish the design here, but if you go to Ruth, if you'll scroll down, or just bring the image down to the overview, above the van, above the truck. Okay, because I guess there would be a possibility, so to speak, put the wood kind of
On the
between the
far side.
building and the one smoker there. Again, I'm just looking at opportunities to reduce the variance if not eliminate the variance. I think that. Just double checking here. No, I think that it finishes my questions on this particular, on the area variance.
From our other guests in the audience, do you have any comments or? No, just curious.
Just my parents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Parents, I have one question.
That's
I'd like to talk about your father.
We're not-
Given the opportunity, he could carry the microphone.
Can I just confirm with the inspector, do you see any concern about this building being moved this structure being moved closer to the building?
Well, that's one of my comments was gonna be the question. I would like, if we could set an approval from the building codes and the fire codes upon this request.
Yeah, absolutely, I'll include that. Right. So what he's saying is, if we were to approve this variance, it would be conditioned not only on approval through the planning commission, but also through the
Building codes.
building
and fire
codes and emergency response codes, correct? Okay. If there's no further questions, I will move to make a motion to approve an area variance for 12 feet, 4 inches. Can I have a second?
Sorry. Martin says second.
Roll call, I'm sorry.
Mike Moore,
Yes.
John Buda,
No.
Martin O'Toole,
Yes.
Cindy Matejek,
No.
Lindsay Self.
No.
Okay. So you do not get granted a variance. And Brian, we have to provide next steps or if there are alternative options are. So the next step would be to submit an appeal. An application for an appeal shall be filed with the secretary within 20 days after the date of this action. And we can provide that information as well. Okay.
In addition, you could also revise your plan. and
Yeah,
submit it.
that was gonna be my next question was, if we do revise, showing it within the setbacks and it's deemed acceptable for fire and everything else, would we then appear before the zoning board again, or would it essentially be approved based on not needing the variance?
Correct, it would not, if it didn't need a variance and it was approved per the zoning plus the building and fair code, in addition to obviously, the other things that are going on with the catering for the
Sure.
community use.
Yeah.
You would not need variance, you would not appear before the BZA.
Okay.
Would it be constructive, would it be helpful, genuinely, to discuss a little bit the reasons why it was denied, and might help them understand if there's something they could adjust around or accommodate to, as opposed to saying yes or no?
Always,
Would that be helpful?
yes.
I'll be happy to go first. I just see opportunities here to reduce the variance. One of the things that we have to look at is consider things objectively. And part of that objectivity is, for example, the magnitude of the request. And that's at least where some of my questions were coming from, as far as can you do this and can you do that, and to minimize the variance. So I guess I saw opportunities to minimize the variance, while at the same time respecting the desire for safety, to ensure nothing gets, there's no problems.
I mean, I don't wanna repeat the same thing, but I think when I read the code, we should only approve things that are minimally necessary to provide adequate relief to your business. I don't think this variance is the minimum variance, just based on our discussion. I don't have a problem with the structure itself. I think that it could be closer to the building, and so I think the closer you can get and the smaller the variance you can get, while still maintaining safety and all of the other things, I wouldn't have a problem.
I have to say, I agree with them, I just think that the variance should have a smaller portion, and still be safe and have what you need.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, but I do appreciate you doing your best to try and navigate the code, so I recognize where you were coming from.
Can I ask, as far as the food truck portion of the request, I imagine that is rejected as well along with the accessory structure, or is that something that is deemed acceptable in this case based on how we present it?
So the request before us is a use variance that you're allowed to have it. And so that has not been voted on yet. We can still proceed with that discussion. So before we move on to that, I guess the question I would have for this group is if we have the code, we have code review and emergency service review tell us what a safe distance from the building this accessory structure is. And which, let's say they allow them to move closer to the building, but still would require a variance. Would you be open to that consideration? Okay. Does that help clear things up for you guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
So if it's deemed necessary to maintain a certain distance, although we are still improving on the property line setback, that would.
So if it was an 8-foot variance instead of a 12-foot variance.
Sure,
You'd be
okay,
closer to the building, but it's something to consider.
okay.
Okay. All right, the next, we move to the discussion on the use variance, which is, as you described, a non-mobile food truck that would be used for, like, if you guys could explain in detail how you would operate that. So, Mr. Davies, you said weekly 4 to 8, be open for walk-up business or online ordering. Is there anything more that you guys wanted to share on that, on how that business would operate?
Yeah, I mean, as far as, we were saying, we purchased a food truck a while back. And we've had several mechanics look at it and have yet to see any return on it and are done trying to fix it. So we're trying to think of how we can use it for our business. We're thinking that if we park it in front of our, place of business, and, I mean, we could even put it on blocks if need be. It's to the point where we would have to have a toad there, so it's definitely not gonna move. So we would put it in front of our building to allow us that carryout option to utilize this investment that we made. And we are very open to suggestions as far as hours. We were trying to be careful about what the neighboring business hours were and talking to our neighbors about that. And everyone seems on board, so if it were okay with you guys, we're just looking to operate it as like, similar to having like a tent and table set up or takeout counter to hand food over to people.
And especially, the timing of it, because there's gonna have to be a build out. So we're heading into winter, which is, our slowest time of our year historically with lack of catering. So we're just trying to generate anything we can during this time.
Any other comments? I have a few questions and then I'll open them to the board. So will food be prepared in the food truck or be prepared in the kitchen, brought to and distributed?
Both.
Okay.
But until the kitchen, until it passes all the necessary inspections, the food will be cooked in the food truck. And that is going to be approved by a food inspector prior to us doing so.
So I would, the comment that I wanted, or I guess question I wanted to bring up, and it sounds like you are open to consideration on how this is, you say it's non-mobile, and by definition, within our ordinance, a food truck is means that any vehicle or trailer, whether self-propelled or propelled by an engine, which has been specifically designated or used for mobile food vending, in which food is processed, prepared, and dispensed to the paying customer. So if this is in fact non-mobile, it wouldn't really qualify as a food truck, in my opinion, it wouldn't require a use variance. So if, discuss this, but I think that I think there's consideration if you really make this non-mobile, and I don't know what that necessarily is, but make a commitment on your part to do that. I think that makes this conversation much easier. I'll open up to the board for any other questions.
I have two. The first is, are we making as a matter of record that you're really not planning on doing seating picnic tables? I'm thinking about, cricket peppers, regular cricket peppers. So it's not the model you're looking for. This is a literally exclusively carry out. And the second is, do you have expectations or commitments you would make regarding the trade dress, the appearance of this thing? So we know it doesn't become an eyesore, or, and I don't even know how one creates a legal standard for, we in this room recently had conversations over from a marketing perspective, what's commercially okay. And I think that could be a little bit elusive in the eye of the beholder. But do you have an intent that we could put on the record here for what this is gonna look like in terms of signage, rust, holes?
So I guess, no rust, no holes, right? Eyes of the beauty with, beholder. And we want it to be presentable, but it's already our business there, so there's not gonna be like this big neon spotlight signage for it, and we'll happily take our cue from you guys, like whatever you guys comfortable with.
It's a blank slate right now.
Yeah,
It's a
like
blank
we can
slate.
literally
There's no
just
brand
paint it
yet.
white and call it a day if you guys want that.
So, I guess it would just exist against the backdrop of some standard I can even put my finger on for how things are maintained and presented for the community, right?
Right.
Right.
I mean, of course I've thought about how I would like to decorate it. I want it just one color and our logo just very simply placed on it. That's been my intent, but we haven't had it wrapped or any design yet.
Oh, I have one more, please, then let go. Do you have provision for the handling of waste and garbage and stuff that comes from the general waste? 'Cause
We
that's-
do have a,
So you mean like a trash can or a dumpster?
Yeah, trash can dumps. I don't know how much waste the site may create. Yeah, it will create waste.
Yes.
Right, zero about plan for how that we handle.
We would go through, and we.
Go through dumpster bandit, who we use now,
Yeah,
and then, you know, depending on the amount of waste, obviously, we don't know what we're gonna generate, but we will have trash receptacles being emptied accordingly, so that nothing is building up and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
I have a question. So are we not calling this a food truck then? Does it need to be reworded is what I want to know. The reason I'm asking is that, are you planning on having like private events? What if somebody said to you, hey, can we have a private event right here on this property? I'm looking at it here and it's saying, of course, the sale of foods and things like that from a food truck is limited and so on. So I don't know, what are we calling it then? And can they do private events there? I don't know.
I mean, per our landlord, he's okay with us doing private events if people request it.
Okay.
So really, it's what's your comfort level?
And I
Okay.
think that falls more under planning, that would fall under conditional use permit. And
So can I ask, what is non-mobile, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
The engine literally doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
No.
So, but what, it was designated at one time for a food truck, right, and maybe even used as a food truck, and probably inspected by like, is it, fire marshal and then insured.
fire marshal does come on and check, for specific things, but it's mostly the health department.
Okay.
It actually has operated once at Blossom, and it barely got there.
Right.
And it went straight to the enhanced code right after to a mechanic. That's the third or fourth mechanic now, and we've just dumped so much and trying to figure out how to fix it. People who specialize in food trucks, and maybe we bought this thing off-site without seeing it, and it's like somebody must have converted it along the way, and it's really hard for people to figure out how to fix it. So it won't run, and we're done putting money into it. So we're at the point where we'll put it on blocks.
Where do you store it now?
Right now, it's actually at the mechanic that's had it since Blossom,
Okay.
and that's it. I believe that's their.
Do you have any intent of towing it to different places?
No. No, we just literally want to park it somewhere.
Yeah.
And serve up. And wherever that somewhere is gonna be the last place it's gonna be unless there's some reason why we have to move it.
Did you get it for a really good price?
Yes, you did.
I have a question. A couple of questions. So for the solicitor, if this was in effect a structure, it did not move under its own power, and there could be many ways to accomplish that. Would this board even be looking at the use variance?
I don't think so. No.
So
we went
if
back and
they,
forth.
I'm sorry.
No, we went back and forth. This is a tough one. The way that it's defined, if you look at it, right, even though it doesn't move right now, but it was specifically designated or used for a food vending, right? Now, it won't be anymore.
Right.
It's perhaps maybe a poor wording of our definition. And again, these regulations literally just went into effect almost last year. So they're brand new. But if you notice, I mean, these specific, planning commission and council specifically prohibited food trucks in this district. And really only allows them for like residential events and village events. So my point is if it is in mobile and it's very clear that it's in mobile, I suppose that's where I don't know, I don't think you would need a use variance. What about the intent to that? I know you mentioned it. Your mechanics say it's not flexible. I mean, if you were to completely rebuild it, right, to make it mobile, then I know that sounds silly, but this is all the stuff that I think we have to think about, and maybe we have to go back and maybe look for the definition of food truck. I don't know, but yeah, it is unique. So, but as a structure, now, see, I think that would be a conditional use permit, because we define retail. And retail includes the sale of food. And it does have, if it's not within an enclosed building, you're supposed to get a conditional use permit for that. So that actually would be another CUP, a conditional use permit before the planning commission, in addition to the catering building.
And the planning condition is defining the commercial kitchen spaces as a restaurant, actually.
Correct.
So,
I was surprised when I read that, I was trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Confusing, because it said restaurant, and I thought maybe that was.
so it would, but, a lot of the definitions of a restaurant, have certain stipulations. Things like one parking space for 2 seats. We don't have any seats. So, it's certainly a unique condition because I don't think either of these, things would be specifically addressed in anyone's ordinances. Right.
Right,
I guess part of where I'm going is if you had an architect design you a building that is a kitchen with a window for people to walk up, that had I'm not saying, not trying to solve anything, I'm just saying, it didn't obviously have an engine because it's a structure. This would not be before us for this purpose.
that's correct.
It would look like a food truck,
Correct.
but it's not mobile, it's not gonna be driving anywhere. From what I'm describing, if the architect said, here's a box.
Well, right, because then it would be a building.
So
It
it's
wouldn't
like
be another house.
an accessory structure, essentially.
Right, and then my question goes to the zoning inspector, if where it's shown, would it, and maybe he didn't look at it from this perspective because it wasn't a structure at the time, but I'm wondering if in effect you had a structure that looks like a food truck, but does not meet the ordinance definition of a food truck. Would we even?
I think we just gotta look at too. We've got the side yard there, the 30-foot side yard setback for the food truck. But I think you gotta take into consideration the licensing of this vehicle with the Board of Health as a food truck. If I'm not mistaken, that's what it's licensed at. So that's something you gotta consider. If they can, justify that it's not a food truck to the Board of Health, then I think we can reconsider everything. But it is licensed as a food truck to the Board of Health.
And it would need to be inspected as such.
Pardon me?
It would need to be inspected as such, as a food truck.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
All of my questions relate around to, is there a way to ensure that, throughout the documentation, it refers to an immobile food truck or a non-mobile food truck. And so my question to you, the applicants, is going to be, is there a way to ensure the food truck is immobilized?
We can put it on a box.
And I'm not trying to determine how,
Yeah.
can it be made or continue to be made and kept immobile? I guess where I was going with my question initially with that, before learning so much more here this evening, is just a statement that it's immobilized now, keeping it that way 6 months from now. So, but of course, when I was thinking about it for the meeting, I hadn't heard your description of its current state, previous state. So, but again, it's just an assurance that something that is before us today would continue as such. I don't know if it being immobilized, I guess I'm not satisfied knowing yet whether it is immobilized would move it into a different category of structure.
Yeah, again, if it was specifically designated or used for mobile food vending, I don't know that it's not a food truck, right? I think it meets the definition still, even though it may not be any longer mobile, the way our definition reads.
And I think,
I see, I understand.
we want to be clear as well that, I think a lot of the intent of the food truck ordinances, right, are to not create local businesses, they're not to bring large crowds to different places and cause traffic issues and things of that nature. It's going to be at the business. We're going to be serving, they're going to be serving their food at their place of business through a window in a truck, right? So the intent is I think, consistent with, say, serving food out of a window of a building, per se. I just think that, you know, it's a unique condition because they do want to, you know, utilize this investment that they've made in the truck, and think that it could be a good use of that.
Right, I have a question. And this is anyone, but I think it's probably directed. First, we specifically didn't say that the food truck definition in our code is mirrored to the food truck definition for the health department or anywhere else.
Correct.
We specifically put in our own definition of food truck. Is it a reasonable interpretation of the definition, and bear with me as I go through this, means any vehicle or trailer which has been, so past tense, specifically designated or used, past tense, for mobile food vending, in which food is currently processed, prepared, and dispensed to a paying customer. If that's a reasonable interpretation of the definition, and if they had a vehicle or trailer that didn't process, prepare, and dispense, but only did one of those things, I would argue it doesn't meet the definition of a food truck.
You're right, the way it's written. That's a reasonable definition.
Could you use this vehicle or trailer and not process, prepare, and dispense, but only do two of those things?
Yes.
One more question. In your letter, it says that, in the letter dated September 23rd, that you plan to potentially offer food. If for some reason this concept didn't work, what would you do with your vehicle or trailer? And then,
Create an wish there's somewhere else to park it and leave it for the rest of its life.
okay, so you would be comfortable, if it didn't work, you wouldn't just let it sit there? You would remove it?
I mean, we would have to leave it there until we found some place to put it. Yeah, so and we've literally been racking our brain for like a year trying to find that place.
Got
So, you know, we're doing our best, but whatever.
Sure, but if neighbors started to complain, they have this vehicle or trailer sitting here, it's not being used for any purpose, it's starting to become dilapidated, it's an eyesore, you would agree to try and move it somewhere?
We're definitely giving it our best efforts. It's in our best interest to get it somewhere where we can operate it.
Right, and if it's totally not gonna work, you'd be comfortable, I mean, at some point you would have to move a scrap yard or something, right? And you guys would figure out a way to get it out of that space?
Yeah.
I don't know that because, I mean, there's complete build out, the vehicle itself doesn't really get built out inside. So,
Well, she's not asking for it. She just wants to know if we are unable to use it, if it's just gonna stay there for the life of the lease, or if it becomes a problem with the village and or our neighbors,
Oh.
that we're gonna move it.
oh, gotcha.
Okay, so this is a different, unique situation.
So to backtrack. Because the definition says process, prepare, and sale. If we didn't process, would that take it out of that food truck definition and by that definition not make it a food truck?
Probably, yeah, I think that's a reasonable interpretation.
Okay.
I'm looking at that definition now, and there are issues with that definition, so.
So if we believe, if a voting member believes it's not a food truck, how do we vote?
Well, that would be, motion can still be made. It's usually always made in the affirmative regardless of how the vote actually goes, right? So, motion, whatever, if you're going to say motion to approve the use variance system, whatever, and whoever votes can give their yea or nay, right? And perhaps give a reason why.
So if I believe this is not a food truck, and we move to approve this thing existing, I would vote yes.
They're granting the use
To
variance.
approve the use variance.
Right,
I don't think it's a food truck, therefore I think it should be allowed, I would vote yes.
now you would vote no. That it would not be a use variance. I know, It's confusing because then it would just, I know, this is,
Yeah, so we'd be voting it down, but they wouldn't,
you wouldn't get the variance, right?
but they wouldn't have to appeal, they would just say it's on a food truck.
That would be the appeal.
So they have,
Now,
Well,
this is
who do they
also,
appeal to? Us?
no, the court of common pleas. From the BZA goes right to the court of common pleas. So there's other ways, you know, you don't have to make a ruling
So
tonight,
we-
there's definitely a way to table this and you
I
can
don't
discuss
want
further.
I don't want to discourage what they're trying to do.
No, I
Can
understand.
they withdraw the request? for variance?
Absolutely, at any time before you vote,
And
before you make a motion.
So if we were to draw the request for the variance and then define it in our submission as a non-food truck, would it be then considered, it wouldn't even necessarily need to be considered per se, would it? I mean,
Not
it's not
necessarily.
an accessory structure, it's not.
not by this,
Not by us.
this board, but
Right.
it would still be contingent by the planning
Planning.
commission.
Because I think at that time, it would then be considered retail sale of food, which is in our definitions, and that requires a conditional use permit.
Retail sale of food.
Yes.
Okay, so
Because
for
it's
the
outside
planning
of
board,
it's outside of an enclosed building. Instead, if it's
So
inside an enclosed building, then that's a different issue.
Okay. So that we would be requesting a conditional use permit for both a restaurant and retail.
That's correct. You know, it's
No,
very
it's a-
confusing.
it's-
Someday we'll work on these definitions more. Someday.
Okay. But also contingent on not meeting the definition of a food truck. So 2 of the 3, we could serve and essentially, but not all.
Correct.
I got a question. Mike.
Yes,
Is this subject to planning commission approval also?
Well, we think so. If you
Okay.
withdraw your use variance and you go
The
and
public
revise, I suppose, or you amend or you resubmit as your, with a definition that actually meets the retail sale of food outside an enclosed building, not a
Okay.
food truck definition,
Right.
then I think that would require a conditional use permit before planning commission. In addition to, right, the restaurant catering business that needs a conditional use permit, because again, that's a restaurant in a district that doesn't permit restaurants, they are only there permitted as conditional use.
So if we didn't sell food out of it and we use it just to prepare food, would we need a conditional use permit for retail sales?
No, then I think you'd use your use variance.
So it would just be covered in the use variance?
Wait.
No.
No, because you would say that again, you would just,
If you're
Prepare food,
just
not sell.
preparing food.
Right.
um,
not dispensing food.
Not dispensing food, literally just using the equipment on the truck to prepare food.
and then where would you sell it then from? The actual inside of the catering?
So we have farmers markets, we have pop-ups that continue through the winter. So we would be preparing our food in the truck, because for example, one of our products is a deep fried Japanese style chicken, and we have a deep fryer on the food truck. So we would use that deep fryer on the food truck to prepare that for like the farmer's market. So we're not selling it out of the truck, we're selling it at an event, and it would be part of the catering.
Yeah, see. So retail, serving and consumption of food and beverages. Places where food or beverages are not consumed within a building may be permitted if a conditional use permit is granted. I still,
So we would need a conditional use permit for that food preparation regardless, which would probably fall under the restaurant use rather than retail. Because essentially, if no sales ever happened on the property ever, we wouldn't have to go for retail. We would be going for our restaurant conditional use variance, whether that food is prepared out on the front lawn or inside the building, it would still be the same use.
yeah, no, I think that's accurate. Wow.
if the planning commission were to disagree and say this is actually a food truck, and you have two boards that disagree on the definition of the code, what happens?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you guys are gonna go to a vote tonight.
I don't know.
If there's no decision tonight, and they're talking about planning commission will be reviewing as far as you guys do.
Got it.
And if they have a different opinion and they think that they need to go, then it would be an appeal. They could appeal and say planning commission erred in deciding that in fact was like the definition of food trucks and like we're going to use things. And that would come to us to decide whether or not planning commission.
Thank you.
Dave, can you just remind me, do we have any regulations on commercial vehicles being parked in the business or industrial district?
Was that right?
Do we have any regulations in the zoning code or elsewhere about commercial vehicles being parked or stored?
No,
I know, I didn't think so, I just wanted to.
no, not that I know.
Okay. So you guys know what you want to do. You want to go to a vote, or do you want to?
Well, I guess that's the question is, I think for the accessory structure, we're gonna, the intent, I think, is to resubmit to avoid any kind of side yard setback variance, as long as it has approval from safety boards, correct? And if we're not defining this food truck as a food truck, as something else, I think it then really is under the planning commission's umbrella, and we would resubmit without the need for a variance. And therefore, I think we would want to withdraw our submission. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, so the applicant is withdrawing their application for a use variance. Do I need to take roll call on that, or?
Nope.
No, okay, so it's strictly withdrawn.
Correct.
So there's no old business or no new business on the agenda. So with that, I will make a motion to adjourn this meeting. Time is 8:03 p.m.
Can I ask
Yes.
one question?
Yes.
I'm confused.
Sure.
If it goes to planning commission, right, and they say it is a food truck, what happens?
Big question.
So it has to go to planning commission regardless, right? We do that before this meeting started.
I'm sorry.
On the catering business.
On the catering business, we knew before this meeting started, they needed to appear in front of the planning commission.
Yeah.
So they would need to give a conditional use permit if they determine that it is a food truck. Or no, they would need to give a conditional use permit if they agree that it is not a food truck.
Right, that's clear.
I believe so, if it's because it's a place where food or beverages are not consumed within the building, but there's the serving and consumption. Required conditional use when it's considered retail, which is not permitted.
So we really want to amend our planning commission
To include.
to include the retail component and make our argument that the food truck, the non-mobile vessel is does not fit the definition of food truck for the zoning ordinance. And based on, the meeting tonight, we feel that the zoning commission is in agreement with that, or is that not something that we can really say?
Yeah, we don't know, and here's the other issue, conditional use permit requires certain notice and public hearing.
Which we requested, and I think
on the 17th.
It's 17th, which, and I think it's like 20 days of notice, so I think we could still, I'm hoping still make an amendment and still meet the criteria
Okay.
and be the next meeting. So that's what I'm hoping to talk to Ruth a lot about
Okay.
tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, that would be that.
Okay.
I understand.
Yeah, and then the minutes from this meeting just say it's withdrawn. They don't say anything about the discussion about being a food truck or not.
Oh, no, the meeting minutes, first of all, this is audio recorded, so you can absolutely always get the actual tape if you wanted to.
Okay, so
The actual
planning,
meeting minutes that then are actually written up,
yeah,
sometimes do include the discussion.
so planning commission would have access.
Absolutely,
That's, okay, got it.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, we'll move to adjourn this meeting. The time is now 8:05 PM. Ruth, will you take the roll?
Mike Malloy,
Here.
John Buda,
Here.
Martin O'Toole.
Here.
Cindy Matija.
Here.
Lindsay South.
Here.
Thank you, everyone.
You guys
Best of luck.
Yeah.